and gentlemen, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all tonight for hosting the PSA is proud to host the Ambassador at UQ tonight. This is a collaboration between the Pakistani Cultural Association and the Pakistani Students Association, and it's a proud moment for us to have the ambassador who has driven up from Canberra only a few days ago. Today's topic for discussion is Determinants for Peace in South Asia. And as you know, South Asia is an extremely important region in today's politics and peace-defining region. And it plays an extremely important role in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Today's event would not have been possible without the help of the executive committee members of the Pakistani Students Association, as well as Dr. Shabir Ahmed, who has helped organize this a lot. The Pakistani Students Association at UQ operates with the aim of spreading Pakistani culture and brotherhood amongst the student community at UQ, along with taking part in cultural exchange activities. We are very grateful to the speakers who are present today. They are all experts in their field, and they are going to be giving their extremely important insights on the topic that we'll be discussing. I'd also like to thank everyone who is present here tonight, and I'd like to invite you for contributing to the discussion at the end of the talk. Thank you.
So I was telling about the significance of this event, basically issues, and particularly the region. South Asia is a region of enormous opportunities and staggering diversity. But currently, unfortunately, it is facing many issues of pervasive poverty and instability, which is increasing the likelihood of insurgency in the region and the rest of the world. Most of the countries in this region, they are faced with various territorial conflicts, cross-border terrorism, or conflicts over natural resources. That is basically inhibiting the economic progress and growth of many countries as well as of the region. Despite the introduction of regional trade agreements in South Asia, what we call the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, unfortunately, the trade volume has been very low due to these various issues, which is basically the main cause of this causing rebellion and creating huge economic losses as well. So that's why we have invited today the experts on different areas. They would share their ideas and they would suggest some policy option that could take this region out of this dilemma. So I'm just going to introduce all of the speakers. We have three panelists, and we have distinguished guests, Her Excellency Ms. Naela Chohan, High Commissioner of Pakistan for Australia. I would like to invite our first speaker, Musa J. He has been Honorable Ambassador of Pakistan for Canada and France, as well as in Malaysia. He has been a permanent Pakistan representative of UNESCO for 2001 and 2003. He has been awarded Order National du Merit for his effort to improve relationship between Pakistan and France. He got his master's degree in international relations and diplomacy from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, USA. He also holds Master of History and English Literature. I would like to invite Mr. Javed Chohan.
Thank you, sir. You introduced me in a very haphazard manner. I am confused. I don't know about the others. subject is Determinants for Peace in South Asia. And I'm sure all of you are well read in what has been happening in that region. I'll describe it to you in the words of President Clinton when he said, it's a nuclear flashpoint. It may have been said in the context of the nuclear test by both India followed by Pakistan. But the underlying problem has been brewing for nearly 60 years in the blood of poor Kashmiris. Over 6 decades, I don't know. But in the recent most uprising, over 100,000 Kashmiri men, women and children have been slaughtered. This is immediate background, but let me go to the text of my speech, in which I try to trace for you what is the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, how it came about, how it affects the lives of people of Pakistan and India in particular, and the security of South Asia in general. In 1947, the British left the subcontinent, dividing their empire into two independent sovereign states of Pakistan and India. It was resolved by them that the Muslim majority areas would constitute Pakistan and the Hindu majority areas would constitute India. While the British colonized directly 2/3 of the subcontinent, the rest of the area comprised approximately 563 princely states which had accepted British sovereignty and paramountcy. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 provided for the creation of the dominions of Pakistan and India, but paramountcy was not transferred to the successor states and was terminated on 15 August 1947. Therefore, the princely states could decide their own fortune. Lord Mountbatten, the then Viceroy of India, suggested the criteria for deciding which of the two dominions a princely state would join. According to him, nominally, geographical situation and communal interest will be the factors to be considered. And I'm quoting his words. Most princely states accepted these criteria except Hyderabad, Junagadh and Kashmir. Thus, the enunciation was of two fundamental principles: geographical contiguity and self-determination. The Maharaja of Kashmir apparently adopted a neutral stand and signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan, according to which the management of the line of railway owned by the government of Jammu and Kashmir and of the postal and telegraphic services and customs in that state continued to vest in the government of Pakistan. India used military force to annex Hyderabad and Junagadh on the grounds that they had the majority Hindu population. Although the princes of both these princedoms were Muslim. In Kashmir, India sent its forces, causing an uprising by the majority Muslim population. The deteriorating situation paved the way for Indian pressure on the Maharaja of Kashmir, who, according to Indian claims, signed an instrument of accession on 14 October 1947. Till today, no such instrument of accession has been produced. According to certain historians and political analysts, the Maharaja never signed any letter of accession, so such a document does not exist. In accepting the request for help in the so-called letter of accession, Lord Mountbatten wrote to the Maharaja, and I quote, in consistence with the policy that in case any state in which the issue of succession has been the subject of dispute, the question of accession should be decided in accordance with the wishes of the people of that state. It is my government's wish that as soon as law and order situation have been restored in Kashmir, the question of the state's accession should be settled by a reference to the people, unquote. I would not like to fail to mention that at the time of the transfer of power, the Muslims comprised about 78% of the entire population of the state of Jammu and Kashmir and around 93% in the valley itself. India's military intervention led to the first India-Pakistan war over Kashmir. Ironically, it was India which raised the dispute in the United Nations, calling for international intervention in the matter. And yet it is India that now denies the UN a role in the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. India maintains that Kashmir is an integral part of India, while Pakistan respects the United Nations resolutions which maintain that Jammu and Kashmir is an internationally recognized disputed territory. As such, stipulated in the UN Security Council resolutions of 30 August 1948 and 15 January 1949, to which both Pakistan and India agreed. These resolutions laid down the principles and procedures for a free and impartial plebiscite under the UN auspices in Jammu and Kashmir. Being in Australia, I may recall that in 1950, the UN Security Council nominated Sir Owen Dixon, the sixth Chief Justice of Australia, as the UN mediator. Despite the dedicated efforts, the issue remains unresolved till today, stymied by India's strategy to talk for the sake of talks, while insisting that Kashmir is an integral part of India, thus making the talks a non-starter, particularly after the 1971 war followed by Simla Accord of 2 July 1972. Actually, according to the Simla Accord, and I quote here, in order to initiate the process of the establishment of a durable peace, both governments agree that in Jammu and Kashmir, the line of control resulting from the ceasefire of December 1971 shall be respected by both sides without prejudice to the recognized position of either side. Neither side shall seek to alter it unilaterally, irrespective of mutual differences and legal interpretations. Both sides further undertake to refrain from the threat or use of force in violation of this line. Unquote. Unfortunately, India violated this condition soon after the signing of the accord and still continues to do so. On the one hand, India wants to put pressure on Pakistan so that it stops supporting the Kashmir issue, while on the other, it has been employing brutal tactics to the Kashmiris' just struggle for securing their right to self-determination. Since 1989, when the people of Kashmir intensified their liberation struggle, Indian troops have killed nearly 100,000 innocent Kashmiris and subjected thousands to custodial disappearance, torture and death. At the same time, New Delhi is holding fast elections in occupied Kashmir to mislead the world opinion about the dispute and the prevailing deteriorating human rights situation in the occupied territory. Prime Minister Modi has taken even a harsher stance and is talking of abrogating Article 370 of the Indian Constitution that gives special status to Jammu and Kashmir. It seems that its agenda is to completely integrate the territory within India and also to change the demographic composition of Jammu and Kashmir. Sad to say, the international community is turning a blind eye to Indian actions in Kashmir, resulting in the continued suffering of the Kashmiri people. In view of the harsh reality that Kashmir has become a nuclear flashpoint, as it involves two nuclear neighbors, Pakistan and India, it is the responsibility of the world community to realize the explosive sensitivity of the issue. It must take cognizance of the fact that because of India's unrealistic and intransigent attitude, peace and stability in South Asia are at stake. The international community should impress upon New Delhi the need to resolve the conflict over Kashmir. The world must recognize the urgency involved in an early resolution of the Kashmir dispute for global peace, security and prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. Melissa Curley. Dr. Melissa Curley is lecturer at International Relations in School of Political Science and International Studies at University of Queensland. She is also directing UQPSA here. Dr. Melissa has published many books as well as articles. One of her most recent books is Migration and Security in Asia. She got her PhD in International Relations from the Nottingham Trent University and degree in government from University of Queensland, Australia. Dr. Melissa.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to recognise Her Excellency Ms. Naela Chohan and my other esteemed panel members, UQ staff, students and members of the Brisbane and wider community. It's wonderful to be here. I thank the organisers very much for inviting me. I'm particularly happy to be able to come and share with you tonight some of the developments and the activities that the Rotary Foundation internationally is doing to promote peace globally, and also give you a snapshot of some of the ways in which our alumni are participating in the South Asian context. So perhaps I can give some of you a brief background into the Rotary Foundation if you've perhaps not heard of it. For those of you who are not familiar with Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation came into being after a number of years after Rotary was originally established in 1905 in Chicago by a group of young men who wanted to get together, in particular Paul Harris, who was an attorney, and he wanted to get together with a group of like-minded professional people in the same friendly spirit that he felt in young towns when he was a young boy. And they decided to call it Rotary after the practice of rotating their meetings around their sort of different areas around the Chicago district. And this is how Rotary started out, as a very much a community-based networking event. And this grew over time, and in July 1925, Rotary had grown to more than 2,000 clubs and around over 100,000 members in 6 continents. And so this group of like-minded people whose mission is service before self, developed into what we know now as the Rotary Foundation, its philanthropic arm. And so after the 1917 convention, the outgoing PRI president, Arch Clump, proposed to set up an endowment, a philanthropic endowment, for the purposes of doing good in the world. And in 1928, this was renamed the Rotary Foundation, and this became a distinct entity from Rotary International. And so the Rotary Foundation it takes on the philanthropic interests of Rotary International, if you like. Some of you may be familiar with Rotary from its attempts to eradicate polio around the world, but it also has a number of other distinct areas of focus, including promoting peace, and I have the pleasure of telling you more about that tonight. So promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, maternal and child health, supporting education, and growing local economies are the 6 sort of main areas of the foundation. And as I've mentioned, many of you will be aware of the Foundation's work to eradicate polio, and that is one of the connections also to my discussion tonight on peace, because the Foundation continues to work with Pakistan, Afghanistan, in the area to eradicate polio as some of the countries that where polio continues to be a challenge. And so far the Foundation has contributed more than $1.3 billion to the polio effort. However, I really would want to talk to you a little bit more about the Peace Centres program tonight, and I'm the director here at UQ of the Rotary UQ Peace Centre. The Rotary Foundation's vision in terms of peace, and we have sponsored, the Foundation has sponsored a number of fellows from South Asia, is really to support emerging leaders who want to work in the field of peace building through academic training. And so the Peace Centres program involves Rotary funding 6 peace centres worldwide, one of which we're very honoured and delighted to have here at UQ in the School of Political Science and International Studies. And so the idea is to develop leaders who will become the catalyst for peace and conflict prevention in their communities around the world. And tonight, many of our current class, 14 Peace Fellows, are in the audience, and some also alumni in the audience tonight. And I do believe that they are going to go on to play an important role in their country's future. The Foundation, as I mentioned, supports 6 peace centres, and every year it funds around 100 peace fellows to study at one of these centres, either at the master's level or the certificate level at the Chulalongkorn Centre in Bangkok. To help them advance their own capacity to go back to their communities or their chosen area in their chosen field. So Rotary acknowledges that peace and conflict is a long-term endeavour, and that these challenges take different forms around the world. So it doesn't take a specific stand or take a specific view on any regional conflict per se. So therefore it doesn't adopt any kind of one-size-fits-all approach, but rather has dedicated these philanthropic funds to support emerging leaders by education scholarships. Recognising that education and dialogue can be powerful tools to mitigate against protracted conflict, and also the structural causes of conflict, which, as we all know, relate to aspects, for example, poverty, development, and so forth. And so the Foundation has committed to endowing the Peace Centre's program in the last few years, and is well on its way to raising US $125 million to endow the program, to ensure that this will continue in perpetuity. Because the good sign, I think, of the polio battle is that it's making great strides. The recent campaign is this close. Rotary is very close to helping stakeholders around the world and governments eradicate polio. And of course, the next question is where can they put their efforts and increase their efforts after that's achieved. And I think many Rotarians that I have spoken to at the recent Peace Symposium in Sao Paulo believe very passionately that peace and conflict resolution is one of the areas where Rotary must continue to support our emerging leaders. I think the fellowship is quite special in that in its selection criteria, it really looks to the individual commitment to building peace broadly, whether it be in their own community setting or in working abroad for NGOs or international institutions. And while academic achievement is one factor, it's not the only factor, and so the commitment to peace is something that's very significant. And over the years, the Foundation has therefore been able to support many fellows who have come from a history of conflict within their own countries, and they bring with them such an important story and impassioned belief, and they're able to travel to one of the peace centres around the world and often be present and study with other fellows who may be involved in, sort of conflicts of a certain type of, with someone's citizenship. So it might bring together Arab and Israeli fellows, it might bring together Indian and Pakistani fellows. And so that vision of bringing together people, creating a dialogue over time means that Rotary can then draw upon a range of alumni that will go on to help support peace. So this approach, I think, has been instrumental in supporting future leaders which may not have otherwise been able to go on to gain advanced education, postgraduate education. And so just to give you a snapshot of some of the ways in which I think this has intervened and contributes to some of the determinants of peace in South Asia. The Foundation has supported a number of peace fellows from South Asia, including India, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, from a range of backgrounds, recognising that there is no one path to peace. So some of our UQ alumni from the region include Vikas Kaura from India, who's now working at the national level on disaster relief and planning and management. Humayra Shafi from Pakistan, who's currently doing a PhD in the School of Political Science and International Studies on women's rights in Pakistan. Atili Saprina is here with us tonight. Atili is a journalist from India, Nagaland, who is working on peace and reconciliation around issues between Nagaland and India via his work in the media and human rights issues. Sanjana Hatuawa from Sri Lanka, who is now a special advisor to the ICT Peace Foundation in Geneva, and who regularly writes and publishes in the Sri Lankan press on peace and security issues. And they're just a few examples. And so this is one way in which the Foundation doesn't discriminate in terms of which focus or which area of conflict it wants to choose. It rather wants to seek out those future leaders that can support ongoing peace. Another innovative way that the Fellowship has intervened in this space of South Asia that we're talking about tonight is by the applied fieldwork experience that our fellows do. And our fellows have participated in a range of fieldwork organisations in the region, such as Catholic Relief Services in Islamabad, Seeds of Peace in Mumbai, and also in Lahore in Pakistan, the UNHCR in Pakistan, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Pakistan, and UNESCO in New Delhi. And Shruti Upadhyaya, one of our Fast 12 fellows from India, she also did her AFE in South Asia, and she's now gone on to share, I think, some of the rich experiences that she had in her home country of India and Nepal with Southeast Asia, and she's now heading up the country representative for Laos and Cambodia for a major European NGO. And so I suppose that example shows that our fellows from the region are able to travel and share their experiences of the challenges of peace and conflict resolution in South Asia, and perhaps break down stereotypes that others have. It also gives a chance for our fellows who are not from the region to travel to South Asia to gather a much more informed and nuanced view of the determinants of peace. And so that, again, that we can try to challenge those stereotypes and help support people in their career endeavours. So to sum up, I think Rotary has taken the long-term view, is taking the long-term view that via its substantial philanthropic leadership in the area of peace education, it can make a contribution to a more peaceful world, not only by supporting education, but also exposing our fellows, both from the region, from South Asia, but also from outside of the region, to global experiences of difference and encouraging dialogue. So for those of you who may be interested in the fellowship, please reach out to me. The Foundation is always looking for people that are passionate and interested in the field, and you can always talk to some of our current fellows or alumni, and we look forward to hearing further tonight with the panel about the topic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa. Our next speaker is Professor Saleem Ali. Professor Saleem Ali holds a chair in Sustainable Resources Development at the University of Queensland Sustainable Mineral Institute. He is author of 3 books. One of his books focuses on Islam and education, conflict, conformity in Pakistan madrasas, and he is also author of over 100 articles. Professor Ali was also chosen as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum in 2011. He serves on the board of governors of non-profit environmental organization in Pakistan. Professor Ali received his doctorate in environmental planning from MIT, master degrees in environmental studies from Yale University, and bachelor degree in chemistry from Tufts University. Professor Singh.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel, and special thanks to Her Excellency Ms. Naela Chohan, Pakistan High Commissioner to Australia, for making the effort to come. With such distinguished diplomats on the panel, I am not going to spend too much time on the political history, which has been covered admirably already by Ambassador Musa J. I'm going to try and focus on what I feel, based on my research as an independent scholar, what I feel are some potential solutions to these intractable problems. And I should note that although my pedigree is indeed from Pakistan, and I'm quite proud of that, I don't have any issues with claiming to have perhaps a certain emotional connection to Pakistan, I am going to speak as an analyst. I have multiple identities. I was born in the United States. I'm a US citizen. I studied in Pakistan for 8-9 years during my secondary schooling, so I certainly have a very strong personal connection to Pakistan, particularly to Lahore. I studied at Aitchison College in Lahore, which has its own pedigree in British colonial history as well. But then I spent most of my career in the US, and now I'm in Australia. I'm an Australian permanent resident, so I'm very much going to put on my hat as a global citizen and as an analyst and try to present these issues as I see them, having had also an opportunity to travel to all of the countries in South Asia, including to many parts of India, to Sri Lanka, to Bangladesh, to Nepal, across the board. So I'm going to try and speak in that capacity, so please bear with me in that regard. Now, going back to the US, where I said, I was born, some of you may have been to the Museum of Modern Art in New York. In that museum, there is a painting by the Spanish artist Salvador Dali, and that painting is titled The Persistence of Memory. Now, what does a painting in New York have to do with determinants of peace in South Asia? This painting, does anyone remember seeing that painting? It's a very famous painting by Dali. I don't know if anyone. It's a painting of melting clocks, essentially, which are on these branches, clocks which are melting. And what Dali is trying to say, it was painted during the period between World War I and World War II. And Dali was concerned about how memory played such a role in the persistence of conflict during that very dark period in European history. And I would say that in many ways the roots of conflict in South Asia have a lot to do with the same sort of persistence of memory. As Ambassador Chohan was noting, the conflict in Kashmir has gone on for 6 decades. The memory of that conflict, going back to 1948, those resolutions of the Security Council, that memory persists to this day. And it is absolutely emblazoned in the memory of, especially in Pakistan, but also in India, just as much. And one of the ways in which we have to be able to resolve any conflict is to learn from history, but to be willing to move beyond it. And that is very difficult to do in the context of South Asia for various reasons. This is a challenge with all kinds of conflicts, but it is particularly a challenge with the South Asian context. I often say to many of my students when I'm teaching conflict resolution, I said, learning from history, it's very important to constantly look in the rear view mirror when you're driving the car. But if you constantly look at the rear view mirror, you will probably drive into an accident or off the cliff. And so, unfortunately, that is a challenge. Now, that doesn't mean we do not look back in the mirror. We should not forget that injustices were done. There is no doubt that injustices were done, and the Kashmiri context particularly is something not just Pakistani historians have noted, but if you read books by people like Shumantra Bose, he's an Indian Bengali historian, he has written an authoritative history of Kashmir, and he has come to very similar conclusions that many of the Pakistani diplomats would come to. That the way in which India has handled the conflict in its early days was in a very unfortunate sort of geopolitical context, and they did not really abide by some of the standards that they had set for themselves, especially with regard to the United Nations. And as was noted, there were many inconsistencies in the way that was handled. That being said, moving forward several decades hence, we have to think about now, how can we change the narrative in order to be able to move towards peace, now that both countries are nuclear powers? There are many injustices that are done in history. Of course, Australia is paramount in that regard, the injustices done to Aboriginal people. But that doesn't mean that we cannot move beyond after a certain point and see that there needs to be some kind of a new chapter, right? Nations, any nationhood is inherently synthetic, right? It is a construct made by human societies in some form or another. We cannot forget that. I mean, look at Africa. It has 58 countries now, right? Those countries have very strong national identities. They are predicated largely in colonial history, right? The Berlin Conference, which crafted much of the mess that has become, unfortunately, many of the African conflicts then. But those national identities are now very strong in many ways, right? Those borders have become very indelible, right? But that doesn't mean that they were always there or there's something inherent and sacred about them. So we have to think, both countries, India and Pakistan, will have to eventually move to a point where they see the inherent synthetic nature of nationhood. Now, the big complicating factor in the context of South Asia is that nationhood itself is interpreted in multiple ways. Now, of course, the most seminal aspect of that is religion. And religion is very important and dear to Pakistanis as it is to Indians. You saw the ritual we started this event with, was with the recitation of the Quran. That just shows you, those of you who came in who are non-South Asians may have been a bit puzzled by what was going on, right? But that is an absolute essential ritual for any Pakistani event, culturally, because religion is so important. There are only 3 countries in modern history which were created simply on the basis of religion, if you look back in the last 6 decades. Pakistan, Israel, and Bosnia, more or less, right? Now, 2 of them don't get along with each other and have no diplomatic relations with each other, but the reality is both were formed essentially on the basis of religion. Now, there's nothing wrong with being formed on the basis of religion, and religion should be held deeply by people who aspire towards the moral principles of religion, and that's important. But what we have to keep in mind is then, if the national identity is going to be based on religion, then we have to craft a way of a more tolerant approach to coexistence within religious identities. And that is needed for India just as much as for Pakistan. When you go to an Indian context, you see the same level of the use of religion in a way which is not very constructive. Religion is a very powerful and sacred, noble human enterprise, and it should be given that role. But it needs to be, of course, interpreted in a context which is going to allow for coexistence in modern societies. That has become very difficult in South Asia because certain vested interests have manipulated religion to their own ends. And that goes back to what Dr. Curley was saying. You know, when you think about the situation in South Asia, the fundamental issues of poverty, desperate poverty, levels of poverty in India are unfathomable for most people who often, the tourists who just go to see the Taj Mahal. The same is true of Pakistan. Pakistan has slightly better poverty indicators than India, but still desperate poverty, child labor issues, all extreme levels of, I mean, there are more people living in abject poverty in India and Pakistan than all of sub-Saharan Africa combined. And we think Africa is the problem, right? So the problem is in South Asia in terms of desperation for human existence at a basic level, right? Now, if religion and all these other important forces can be used in a positive way, as is being done by many Muslim organizations and many other religious organizations, I think they can play a very constructive role in peace building. We saw that happen with the Kashmir earthquake, where you had Islamic organizations helping Hindus and Hindu organizations helping Muslims. That is the kind of spirit which is needed if we're going to have peace in South Asia. Religion can be used in that very constructive way. There are madrasas in West Bengal where Hindus send their children because the quality of education is so good. But there are also madrasas in Pakistan, unfortunately, which are not of the same quality, and where you have, unfortunately, a lot of very nefarious activities being preached. On the other hand, there are many good schools as well, Islamic schools, which are also doing a great job in providing free room and board for orphans. So you need to configure religious identity in South Asia, which is such a desperately poor part of the world, in order to connect poverty with peace. And that is a very important role which I think organizations such as Rotary can play, which educators can play. And then the third point I would make is with regard to the role other countries can play, such as Australia. Now, it was noted, quite importantly, that at one time Australia had a mediator through the UN system that helped India and Pakistan. When you have such a trust deficit, it is important to have a third party play a role. So what I'm saying is you need basically a three-pronged strategy. You need a strategy which focuses first and foremost on the overarching synthetic nature of nationhood, being willing to be flexible around borders and identities. Second, you need the role of civil society and religious organizations to play a constructive role. And third, I would say you need to have some kind of a mediating role, which is needed either through the United Nations system or through a third party like possibly Australia, but I think Australia does not unfortunately have the same international clout as other countries might have. Most notably, China could play a very important role in mediating between India and Pakistan. That is going to be absolutely essential, and there will need to be various levels of pressure tactics that are played in order to let that play, to lead to fruition there. So I hope I have not spurred too much controversy, but I want to speak beyond cliches and to give you what I feel are some of the very key essential determinants for peace in South Asia, no matter how difficult they may be sometimes for us to digest. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saleem Ali, and thank you all of the speakers. Really, it was such an informative and thought-provoking session. We have now question and answer session. I will take questions. Before that, I must acknowledge Mr. Muhammad Asghar, Brigadier Muhammad Asghar, who is the defense advisor, who has initiated this, basically this idea, and he suggested me to organize this. I'm thankful to him for suggesting this seminar. It's really very helpful. We have now question and answer session. I would request everyone just give a brief basically introduction of yourself and make your question as brief as you can. Yes, please.
Hi, I really appreciated everybody's insights on the topic. As an Indian student with an undergraduate background, I will first make a comment and then I will ask two questions really. Sir, I appreciated your historical background on the history following partition and prior to it. While in India, the story that we are told is slightly different, and I'm in no real position to comment on it. I did want to highlight that. My question and more immediate concern, however, is following, I know in 1997, under the I.K. Gujral government in India, we had a series of confidence-building measures which were appreciated, I believe, by both sides across the border, right? And I'm here on the invite of my dear Pakistani friend. Here in Australia, I have yet to find close Indian friends, but I have found close Pakistani friends who I revere in the same graces that I do my own countrymen. So my question to you, sir, is what is happening in terms of confidence-building measures between our two countries? And also, how easy is it for me, for instance, to get a visa to go to your country? Say, speculate my friend were to get married, and I would like to go for her wedding or for her my own wedding. What are the avenues for further confidence building in this regard?
Maybe Miss, you may introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Supriya Shukla. I'm a Master's of Business, Master's of Commerce student here. My previous educational background is that I'm an honors degree holder from the University of Delhi in political science.
You referred to Mr. Gujral,
Yes.
1997.
That's right.
I negotiated those deals. I sat on them. We had this bilateral meetings in Delhi, then in Islamabad. And after these meetings in Islamabad, we agreed to an agenda, a written agenda of 8 points. 6 of them were India's position. 2 of them were Pakistan's positions. The only concession they made was that the first item on the agenda was peace and security in South Asia. Later on, when I was ambassador in Malaysia, one of the senior interlocutors from the other side he was there, so I asked him about the meetings. So he said, well, we had to go through the motions. Mr. Gujral at that time had only one vote in the parliament, and that was his. So whatever the agreement, it would not have passed through the parliament, but they went through the motions. Our government at that time, which is the present government of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, is very keen. Resolve the matter. We have wasted on both sides 68 years. And Professor has talked about poverty. It's not poverty, it's so excruciating when you see a generation after generation of talent being wasted. And these two countries have spent so much money, their resources, which you could have devoted to poverty alleviation, education, etc. But they had to divert these very precious resources. And both countries are not rich. So if I can use the word rupee, you understand that.
Certainly.
It would be easier. Every single penny could have been devoted to something else. It was not. Because of this problem. Now you talk of visas. Try not to get married somebody in the other country. It would be easy. No, I'm joking. You see, visa regimes are established in reaction to what one country does. So if in India say you have to wait for 1 month to get your visa, we'll do the same. If they say we'll charge you $100 for the visa, we will do the same. It's not just one country, everywhere are these visa regimes. So if the British say the visa fee is £1,000 for people coming from Pakistan, we will impose £1,000. So visa regime, there have been discussions in the context of the agenda item, people-to-people contact. But some of the, let's say, SARC-related officials, okay, expedited. Business people do it more quickly. But generally, security considerations or the excuse of it is a long drawn-out process on both sides. Then the other issue is, it's not, I get a visa for Australia, I could end up in Darwin or in Tasmania. The way we issue visas, it's city-related. I, as a diplomat, went to Delhi for these negotiations. I got a visa for Delhi. I could not get out of Delhi. My visa did not apply to Agra. So I didn't see the Taj Mahal, you know. I didn't visit history, that's what I'm saying.
Does that apply across the board for even, say, tourists? So, say for instance, my friend who invited me here, earlier today we were discussing it. She says, oh, I need a sponsor. Maybe I said, I'll sponsor you. I'll even push it through the NEA if I can. That's
You are in trouble with.
every now and then. But, sir,
No, I mean, what I'm telling you, I may be a little outdated because I was part of diplomacy till a few years ago. But the regimes, visa regimes, are quite tight and cumbersome. We have, okay, you have religious, I don't know how you define it, they have these religious sites.
right.
You go on a to
To
go and pay respects to your saint.
Yes.
I don't know what he did 1,000 years ago, but he's still upsetting everybody's minds. They are a little easier. But the bottom line is, there is a category of the diplomatic, the official, and the normal visas. it takes time. Even if we appoint a diplomat in Delhi, it will take a month. So if it takes a month there, we will wait a month also. But there has been effort to try and remove some categories of people, as I said, business people, officials, and maybe give them an extended visa. Okay, if you get a visa for India or for Pakistan, you can go all around, not just to specific cities. That's what my case. I couldn't get out of Delhi. And I couldn't speak out of Delhi. Because we look after each other so well as hosts.
Of course. I have, however, witnessed in my last year of high school the start of student exchange in high school. While my particular school was not participating with Pakistan, we had students from Sri Lanka and Bangladesh who we hosted. I personally hosted a student from Bangladesh. It was great. We did, however, interact at a big concert held in New Delhi in Connaught Place, where we all the schools got together, and every now and then there was the cross-border romance, and things like that did crop up. But I do want to say from a layperson's perspective, and as also a student who was a part of these exchanges, that they are great, and I do hope that we can continue to have these in the future. Thank you.
If I may, Ambassador, with your permission, talk about cross-border romances, it happens mostly in Indian movies. And what happens is, the boy was a Pakistani and the girl was an Indian. But it hurts the ego so much that the roles are reversed. What was the name of this movie?
PK.
That was made by his family. I've met his auntie who lives in Pakistan. I've met them as
Let's
his
take a
residents
little
in
bit
Delhi.
more. I'm sorry. Sorry, you can continue this discussion during the dinner. Yes, please.
My name is Sumit Basha. I'm a studying Bachelor of Pharmacy here at UQ with a keen interest in Pakistan's internal and external affairs. My question to the Madam Excellency is, how much has the Pakistan High Commission in Canberra rejuvenated the civil nuclear deal between Pakistan and Australia to avert the energy crisis that we are facing in Pakistan? And this might be out of your jurisdiction, but will Pakistan pursue a similar US civil nuclear deal with the United States as well, as they have done sort of with India, with both Australia and with the United States, keeping in mind? Thank you.
Oh, I'll just maybe comment on this because I've actually written a paper on energy security in South Asia and looking at different ways in which especially Pakistan can meet its energy shortage currently. I mean, the nuclear dimension of the deal between the US and India, a lot of it has to do with bravado in terms of substantive response to India's energy crisis. It is not likely to be that efficacious. I mean, if you look at the economics of building a nuclear reactor for power delivery, currently they do not work out favorably for any place in South Asia. You need a very particular context. I mean, that's especially why Australia doesn't have a nuclear power plant. I mean, keep that in mind. You know, there's a country with the world's largest uranium reserves and they don't have a nuclear power plant. And there's a reason for that. So there's a lot of bravado around it in terms of, well, you know, we made the deal with the Americans and we're going to get all this special access. But if you actually look at the energy delivery issue, what is needed is natural gas as a transition fuel, extremely important. I think the potential for the LNG option for Pakistan is very important, whether it's through Qatar or it's through Australia. The other is pipelines. I think pipelines have a tremendous potential, especially with Turkmenistan and certainly also with Iran. India has not cooperated on the IPI pipeline, which I think would have been in its best interest. And I did a paper for the Brookings Institution specifically 3 years ago looking at the way in which the pipeline option, if it had been properly mediated, would have actually had peace dividends for both countries. Because there would have been a reasoning to build peace, in terms of the infrastructure delivery there. So I think that's one option, and then the other is hydropower, certainly, and having a grid. I mean, there is the conversation around the SARC energy grid. That is the kind of conversation which should be pursued. And I think countries like the US should play a mediating role in developing the SARC energy grid. We actually have a PhD student at UQ, one of my students, who is doing his dissertation on the energy security dimensions of the SARC grid. So I can put you in touch with him if you're interested.
Thank you. I will just give a conclusion at the end after all the questions are asked. Thank you.
Yes, please.
My name is Ashok Hussain. I'm a physician in Brisbane. First, thank you very much for inviting us to be present here. It's wonderful to hear all you esteemed people. Thank you very much. Just a comment and a question from Professor Saleem Ali. As you pointed out, the determinants for peace in South Asia, how would you equate some measures to bridge the gap between poverty and religion? What are some of the things that the government can do to bridge the gap? And how does the willingness from the government equate to all this? And my second question from Her Excellency would be that how would the deal with China equate in future in terms of peace and prosperity between the two countries? Would it play a role, or would things get more messier? Thank you very much.
So in terms of, you're asking about the role of the government in trying to motivate religious organizations towards poverty alleviation. I mean, I think there are many interesting corollaries between other religious groups worldwide who have been involved in poverty alleviation. If you look at some of the world's largest charities currently, many of them have religious roots. World Vision, which is one of Australia's major charities, it's a religious organization, even though we don't usually associate it with religion, but they are run very professionally in that context. So Pakistan has had actually some phenomenal charities like the ED Trust, certainly, which is well known for running the world's largest ambulance service. I think those kinds of organizations, if there was perhaps, I don't know if the government can play a role particularly. I mean, they could provide tax incentives, but unfortunately there's so much tax evasion anyhow in Pakistan that might not be helpful. In the US, that's what the government has done, is they provide tax incentives. So I think what is needed more so is for religious leaders to take this on as their mandate, just as they are very astute in motivating people to political rallies. They can just as well motivate people to volunteer their time to build hospitals, to build schools, to invest in those kinds of activities which are providing, and by school I mean school which is going to be able to provide a career trajectory for Pakistanis. Because a madrasa which is not able to have potential to provide a career trajectory. I did a survey of madrasa graduates in Pakistan. 90% of them, the only career they can find is just going and teaching the Holy Quran in other people's homes. They cannot find jobs in regular venues. So they end up having, if they want a job, they have to go and get another degree. So I think it's very important for religious organizations to build those kinds of educational institutions which can provide a career path for them. If you look at most of the American major universities, they started as religious universities. Princeton was a Presbyterian university, but it's produced Nobel laureates. But that's not how religious universities in Pakistan, unfortunately, are framed. The only example of a quasi-religious organization in South Asia, which has had that, is the Hamdard University in India, which has its roots as a religious organization, but it produces PhDs who can get regular jobs as well.
So we have two more questions before. Yes, please.
I have two questions. One for
very brief question and
yes, and one for Dr. Melissa. I'm a PhD student here at UQ Center for Social Responsibility in Mining. One question, we have kind of ignored the issue of Afghanistan with Pakistan and its intrinsic relationship in terms of identifying the peace and conflict within the region. We have recently observed very dramatic change of new president who came as Ashraf Ghani, and who showed entirely a different attitude towards Pakistan, especially in comparison to Karzai regime. The very first visit he made was to Pakistan, and then the second visit was to China, and the third visit was to Saudi Arabia, which all China and Saudi Arabia are close allies to Pakistan. My question is how you see these developments very contrast to the previous government, and how you see that it can bring, or it is leading towards a more prosperous relationship between the countries, and to tackle the issue of Talibanization and extremism. The second question is in particular to you, Dr. Melissa, is recently Pakistan has taken very bold steps to counter the terrorism both at the military establishment level, and also at the government, and commitment is there. But this terrorism is at a kind of the first level, but extremism, or fundamentalism, which Professor Saleem also mentioned, has been kind of it has intoxicated the minds through the education, through not just it's confined to the madrasa, it's also through the education at schools. I also remember how the schools syllabus intoxicate the minds of the individuals against, for instance, India, and so as the Indian syllabus intoxicate the minds against the Pakistanis, and also the issue of jihad or that kind of, how the Rotaries involved in that kind of, and how you see that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question.
It's not perfect.
No, it's not working.
Oh.
Sorry.
No? Okay, I'll-
Left to speak up by your name?
Yeah, you can come.
Thanks very much for your question. I think some of the more substantive questions about the terrorism aspect I'll leave to the other panellists, but in terms of Rotary's role, I think the way in which our fellowships are selected is really comes from the grassroots, from Rotary clubs around the world, including in Pakistan, but also we do have, or the Foundation has a mechanism whereby if there are fellow students, potential candidates who are in Pakistan and they want to apply and they cannot secure a sponsorship or identify a local club, then the Foundation has a way of linking potential applicants to international clubs that are willing to sponsor them. And so we have had this situation before where a Rotary Club in the US may Skype and interview fellows who may be in Africa or South Asia and other locations. So there is a process, it's really a very grassroots process where Rotary clubs and Rotarians are reaching out and looking for candidates that they feel fit the criteria in terms of having a commitment to peace and building peace. So I think that has evolved out of the need to link up Rotarians and potential candidates and get around some of those geographical difficulties, because they do exist. And it is, I think, it's evolved because the fellowship is a truly global one, and they go to enormous financial efforts in terms of the application process to identify the best people in the world. And it is a very, every year annually, there's a very intense process that tries to find people. So I think the message is that if there are interested candidates and they may not be able to find a local club or local sort of sponsorship, then they can contact the Foundation in Evanston and Chicago, or myself, I can put them in contact, and they can help facilitate their application. Thanks.
Would you like to respond?
I do
You want to make one question on the last one?
We have two questions there.
Can we ask them the question in one go? All the 3-4 questions can shoot up.
Okay, yes, you start please.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Navi, one of the Rotary Peace Fellows. that Dr. Curley just talked about. I have two questions, one for Dr. Saleem, and thank you for that very well-rounded and impressive history and the intersectionality between those different factors that play a role in this instability of the region. But my sort of concern is that when we exhaust all avenues for peace, so the last 60 years kind of showed that on both sides, India and Pakistan, the wishful thinking, so to just phrase it that way, is lacking. Flexibility on identities, easing the border issues, and connecting the rational solutions for poverty and religious moderation. All of these seems to have been exhausted and with no real sort of tangible outcome. And one of the solutions that you propose when it gets to that kind of situation where you might want to involve international organizations such as you call it the UN system. So the question goes, isn't there some sort of deep resentment for that external or outside mediation, if you will, because this very conflict was somewhat orchestrated by the outsiders. So how could you hope for a solution when the problem was planted by the outsider? So that would be one question. And a real quick question for the ambassador. In terms of Afghanistan, he raised a question. Just wanted to ask briefly on a different angle. In the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of developments happening. The gap between the Pakistan and Afghanistan is really growing, especially in terms of trust and confidence building. Where do you see the future of the two countries in terms of peace building and the role of Taliban? Because is Pakistan willing to choose the side of the Taliban, or is Pakistan willing to choose the side of the country of Afghanistan, making a distinct position between the two? Because right now is the time they have to really declare their position, either support of Pakistan or abandon them and stick with the Afghan as a neighboring country.
So I would again request, just please make as brief as you can make your question.
Do you want me to ask the question now or after the
No,
answer?
we are just taking our question now.
I've got a quick question relating to what the gentleman here has said. My name is Saleem Ali. I'm studying at UQ. And my question is about peace situation in Pakistan as it's deteriorating. And the part of the reason, as I see from outside, living here for 15 years, that injustice has fueled most of it. Injustice on every level, injustice on educational level, religious level, and we always blame outside conspiracies and outside powers for that. But my question is what Pakistan as a nation, as a government is doing to overcome the injustice and bring peace in that regard. When one person is not given justice in the on ground root, he's going to be also angry and he's going to be on the streets, whatever you call it, extremism, terrorism, whatever, that is just going to fuel that extremism point of view. So my question is how Pakistan is going to tackle that issue of injustice.
So, yes, please.
Thank you so much for letting me ask a question. I'm Usman, I work as a civil judge in Pakistan, and I have a question with Mr. Musa J. Like, it's a hypothetical question, like had Qaeda let Mountbatten be a common Governor General at the time of independence, would there be no issues between India and Pakistan, like asset distribution or Kashmir issue, or was it a right decision by Qaeda to be the first Governor General?
Thank you very much.
Last question.
Yeah.
I'm the last one, guys. My question is all about this proposition, which is all about the determinants for the peace solution for the South Asia. My view is like history has given us many lessons, and post-industrialization era has given us so many determinants, so many antecedents to peace and prosperity. So they are already established, we can borrow them, we can, run the models. Issues are about the moderator. So you have certain determinant or antecedent to the peace. When you try to run the model, there are certain moderators which negatively impact the relationship between the two, such as when you come to Pakistan, it is Talibanization. When you go to India, it is the most fundamentalist regime that we can see these days. So issue is not about the determinants or the antecedent. We can borrow any model, we can run it. The issue is about the moderator which has a negative relationship, which has a negative impact between the relationship of determinant and the outcome. Very good.
I would request all panelists to just give very brief answer because we have another.
About Lord Mountbatten. If he were the common Governor General, at that point of time, the issue was two separate states, two separate identities. If Lord Mountbatten had been Governor General of the two dominions, to the outside world, it would have just looked like one dominion. So, that is not the issue at all. Probably, if you were trying to say it was an ego, or was it the Mountbatten family which did damage to Pakistan? There are a lot of versions, some of them very perverse in history. But this revisionist question has been raised, that if you had let him be Governor General, and the Qad had not taken over this role, perhaps he would have helped us on a lot of issues, the water agreement, the border agreement. But at that time the issue was, here was a new state, a new sovereignty which had to have an identity. With Lord Mountbatten, it would have just been one continuation. Well, he was Viceroy, and now he's the Viceroy of both the dominions. And if I may address another question about Afghanistan and Taliban, Her Excellency would be addressing the larger perspective. It's no choice. Taliban was just an occurrence in Afghanistan. I wish if you study how they emerged, you would be shocked. What a rape of a young girl in Kandahar led to the emergence of the Taliban entity, because they said, we will get this girl justice in a family. About Afghanistan, this question doesn't pose itself. We have lived together since millennia, and if Afghanistan is still there, it is because of Pakistan. At one time, 5 million Afghans, every fifth Afghan or fourth Afghan was in Pakistan. We sustained them, we provided them succor, we looked after them. Even today, there are between 2 to 3 million Afghans in Pakistan. They don't want to go back home. At least they have a chance in Pakistan. In the war against the Soviets, it was Pakistan alone which stood with the Afghan people. Nobody supported them. It's subsequently the issue of the Cold War entered in, and the so-called free world joined hands with Pakistan in defense of the Afghan people. Yes, we train the fighters ideologically, materially. A lot of these fighters in Afghanistan were trained in the tribal belt. Then they went into Afghanistan because they had to have that ideological motivation in defense of their homeland. We stand with the Afghan people. And now I'm talking as an individual, I'm not making a political statement. That is Her Excellency's job. But ultimately, the Afghan people have to think it through themselves. If they want to save themselves, they have to. Whatever be the regime, whether it was Karzai. Karzai lived for 11 years in Quetta. Do you know that? We provided him refuge. before he became the president of Afghanistan. Whatever the Afghan people choose, whom they choose, how they choose, they have to sort it out themselves. We can facilitate, we can help them, but the choice has to be theirs. Pakistan wants to impose a regime. Nobody has done that. Even the Afghans can't decide which regime to keep in place. They have to sort out their own internal issues. We will extend in Pakistan. We had half a loaf of bread. We shared that half with the Afghan people. When the Soviets withdrew in 1988, the international community gave Pakistan $5 for 1 year for each refugee. That is all we got. Because everybody said, oh, the Soviets are gone, forget Afghanistan. And we said no. We begged, we encouraged the international community, all the partners, don't abandon them. They need us. Nobody bothered to listen to Pakistan. They said, okay, you have the problem, you have the refugees, you solve it out. We have to live together as contiguous neighbors. We have to stand by each other, historically even, culturally, socially. We have to be together. We will stand with the Afghan people. And personally, I wish they would also stand by themselves, not keep on fighting and not let their country be taken over by all the warlords. Each warlord has some territory. Even the recent times when another power occupied Afghanistan, they rented the warlords to do their fighting. Good at bombing, but rent the warfare to the warlords. I may be wrong what I'm saying, but I sat in that position for decades examining this issue. Therefore, I may be totally wrong because I've studied the problem a long time. Thank you, Excellency. I'm talking nonsense.
So there are a couple of other questions. Who will be
I think it's better
I know the discussion is getting more interesting. I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Naela Chohan, who is the current Pakistani High Commissioner to Australia. Prior to coming here, she was also serving as an ambassador, Pakistani ambassador to Argentina. In the past, she has assumed a leadership position in 8 different Pakistani diplomatic missions across the 5 continents. And one interesting fact I just want to tell you is, Ms. Chohan is a women's rights advocate and she is an artist as well. Please.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Dr. Shabir, for the very kind words that you have used for me. Ms. Humaira Dulce, thank you so much as President of Pakistan Students Association to provide me with this opportunity. Dr. Shabir, Dr. Saleem Ali, Ambassador Musa J, Dr. Melissa Curley, Dr. Ali, President of Australia Cultural Association, representatives of Pakistani Australia Cultural Association, representatives of Rotary Foundation, distinguished participants, thank you so much for taking out your precious time to be here. It is a manifestation of your keen desire to have peace. Whatever the determinants, as very lucidly described by the 3 panelists here, the the important objective is how to reach that goal. There are various points that have been raised. If you allow me, I will try to summarize them. Talking about creating dialogue. Rotary is working, creating young leaders to have that dialogue. There are representatives from both the countries here, which is a great pleasure for me, because dialogue is important. Ambassador Chohan spoke of 1997 when the first round of composite dialogue process had started, and he was one of the drafters of that document. I think that was the first round which was successful, but then, as he explained why subsequent round of talks did not follow through. There are positive indicators. Recently also, the two leaders met on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, of which the two countries have become members now. And they had agreed that the advisors on foreign relations of the two countries would meet, and it's going to happen shortly by the end of this month, I hope. These are on official level very important developments that I wanted to share with you. Dr. Saleem spoke of Salvador Dali and his painting on memories. Yes, memories are important. Memories give you a sense of relativity when it comes to history and identity. But memories also fade. And the young generation, I know when I talk to my parents or when I spoke to Musa's father, who was there when this partition took place, and how people were being massacred, and how he as a young surgeon was stitching women's wounds that had been torn to really kill the baby inside, and as a young surgeon how they were doing the surgeries. And there's so many stories that you can hear. But all of us here, including myself, we are born in free, independent Pakistan. And we have not experienced what our older generation had experienced. We see India as a separate country, as an independent country, and you definitely have a very conscious sense of identity without that hang-up of past. And it's the younger generation that is the future of the region. Kashmir is an important issue because, as was asked about confidence building measures, both sides have been taking confidence building measures. Several steps have been taken. But whenever anything happens in Kashmir, it goes back to zero. Why? Because that is an important issue that's lingering since the time of independence. It's not about stereotype. It's not about cliché. It's about reality. If the reality changes, the memories will fade. If rape is not used as an instrument of war, which is happening in Kashmir even today, how extrajudicial executions are taking place even today of young men, memories will fade and a new outlook will come. But we are optimistic. We have to be, because we all share this planet and we have to make it livable and we have to bring peace. And the whole idea here of my being present in this and your being here is that there is a keen desire to explore possibilities of peace, because that is imperative. How to bring that change? When I look at you, it gives me hope. yes, there is that positivity. There is democracy in Pakistan. And we are working on poverty, which Dr. Melissa spoke of. Poverty is also very important. But whenever we put our resources on poverty elimination programs, on education, on social development, like Ambassador Chohan said, so much of budget is being put in defense by both the countries. I don't know if you are aware, in 1974, when India did its first nuclear test and it called it a smiling Buddha, I'm sure Buddha would not have smiled at it. But Pakistan was a country that tabled a resolution in United Nations on South Asia as a nuclear-free zone. That resolution was thrown in the waste paper baskets of United Nations. Religion and poverty. Yes, there's a lot of philanthropic activity going on, but we cannot allow wrong narratives under the pretext of religion, because religion is about peace, religion is about love, religion is about care. That narrative has to be made stronger, and it can only be made stronger, and the narrative of the extremists has to be counter-checked through positivity, because there was a talk of injustice. Injustice, wherever it may be, whether it was the unfinished agenda of independence, whether it is poverty, whether it's lack of participation in the mainstream economy, whether it's education, wherever injustice would be, it will breed that extremism. We are working at it. And even when this North Waziristan operation was going on, we had skirmishes on our border, eastern border. And we were talking to the international community that fighting terrorism is a common enemy. This is enemy of India too. This is Pakistan's enemy. This is Australia's enemy. This is everybody's enemy. So why, when they know that we are trying to eliminate extremism and terrorism, are they provoking our borders? They knew our armies are working in North Waziristan. To provoke at that time was being opportunist, but with a short-sightedness. Because if we do not end this issue altogether and work together, stand together, it will hit all of us. So you may get a short-term benefit, but in the long run, it will hit you harder, no matter who you may blame. There was a talk of outside mediation. Why is that required? Because we have been going through this talk process over and over and over again. It doesn't work. And the problem is on UN Security Council agenda. So it is the responsibility of international community. Even at home, when your two kids are fighting, it is somebody big in the family who comes and brings sense that, hey kids, learn to share the toy, don't start fighting. Somebody bigger, somebody who has that authority to come and bring sense, because it does not serve anyone's purpose. And Kashmir is not just about territory. Kashmir is about people also. They are living people, and they are people who are dying. It's not just rhetoric, it's not just cliche, it's a reality. There was a mention on Australia-India nuclear deal. To be very honest, as I said, in 1974 when we had tabled South Asia as nuclear-free zone, we believed it. Going nuclear was not our choice, it was a necessity. And even signing NPT We have said if India signs, we will sign. Because we do not have that ambition. Any fueling or strengthening of nuclear arms to any one country is detrimental to peace in the region. Whether it is under the pretext of energy or whether it is under any other pretext. It is a dangerous game. And we don't really want to play it, but it's a deterrent which has saved our integrity, our sovereignty. There was also a mention of CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and what would be the repercussions. We look at it as very positive. It is very much in line with the post-2015 sustainable agenda. It's not just about drawing a route or a corridor. It's about sustainable development with infrastructure, with energy, with many, many projects in all areas which will benefit our poverty alleviation program, our education, our infrastructure, and not just Pakistan and China, but the whole region will benefit. So we think it's a very positive development and we are committed to it. A point was also raised about education to counter extremism. I think that's very, very important. And we in Pakistan have taken this decision of registering all the madrasas. That to register, they have to give their syllabus. What are they going to teach the young children? And they also have to declare the sources of funding. And to bring them in line with the mainstream education system so that those who graduate from it then can seek employment that Dr. Saleem was referring to. Talking about Afghanistan and Pakistan relations, we are brotherly countries, we are neighbors. We are supporting Afghanistan in establishing its democratic institutions. We are in constant dialogue with them, and we are now sponsoring the Heart of Asia Istanbul process. We believe that peace and stability, democracy and economic development has to be Afghan-owned and Afghan-led. The Istanbul process, or Heart of Asia Istanbul process, is Afghan-owned and Afghan-led, and we are hosting it in Islamabad. And we are inviting all the friends of Pakistan and Afghanistan to come and give their support to it. I thank you very much for this occasion. God bless you.
Thank you, Her Excellency. Thank you for all discussion, providing such an informative session today. And all of these discussions, they raise different issues, policy issues, which are basically causing political instability in the region, and increased budget on defense from particularly both countries, multi-billion dollars budget that is trapping the nations into poverty. So I hope we will see someday there is some solution for that. I don't want to just make any further delay between the dinner and Thank you very much for all coming and listening to our speaker, and give a big hand to all the discussants.